Blow out a candle in a windowless room and hold your hand in front of your face. You can't see it. Not dimly, not in outline, nothing. That was the standard visual condition for every human being on Earth, every night, for hundreds of thousands of years. And in winter, at 50 degrees north, it lasted 14 hours or more. 14 hours of nothing to look at, nothing to do, and one small fire that goes out if nobody feeds it. Modern humans sleep about 7 hours. Do the arithmetic on that gap, and you get 7 hours a night, every night, of conscious darkness, with no phone, no book, no lamp. Nobody has ever explained that away with, they went to bed early. Because they didn't. What filled that hole involves a hormone, a Wisconsin sleep lab, a Nairobi rock shelter, and a lot of talking about people who weren't there. Start with the myth that people just slept through it. That's the comfortable answer, and the physiology kills it fast. In the early 1990s, Thomas Wehr, a psychiatrist at the National Institute of Mental Health, ran a deceptively simple experiment. He took volunteers and gave them 14 hours of darkness a night for a month, mimicking a winter without electric light. At first, they crashed and slept 11 hours, catching up on modern sleep debt. Then their sleep settled at around 8 hours. The other 6 hours in the dark, they were awake. And they didn't sleep in one block. They slept about 4 hours, woke for 1 to 3 hours, then slept again. That middle wake-up wasn't insomnia. Wehr measured their blood and found melatonin levels staying high right through the waking gap, and the volunteers described the state as something like quiet meditation, not the wired anxiety of a modern night. Their bodies weren't fighting the dark. They had a room in the night that we don't have anymore, and they had furnished it. Which means the question isn't how they slept 14 hours, it's what human beings did with a 2-hour hole in the middle of every single night. Historians actually have receipts for that hole. Roger Eckhurch, a historian at Virginia Tech, went looking through pre-industrial European documents and found the segmented night written everywhere once you knew the words. There was first sleep and second sleep, and in French, premier sommeil. Eckhurch collected over 500 references to it across court records, diaries, medical texts, and literature, stretching from antiquity to the 19th century. Nobody was explaining the concept because nobody needed it explained. What did they do in the gap? Everything. They prayed, they urinated, they poked the fire, they talked to whoever was on the pallet next to them, they had sex, they interpreted the dream they'd just woken out of. A 16th century French physician recommended the interval between the sleeps as the best time for conception, on the grounds that people had rested and had more enthusiasm for the job. That is, as far as medical advice goes, one of the more achievable prescriptions in history. Eckhurch's reading is an interpretation, and other historians have pushed back on how universal it was. But his own explanation for why the word disappeared is the part that stings. It didn't die out because people got healthier. It died out because streetlights arrived. Before we get to the streetlights, sit in the dark properly for a second, because the dark was not empty, it was loud. In a Tanzanian night with the Hadza, or in the Kalahari, dark means hyena. It means leopard. Lions hunt most successfully in the darkest part of the lunar cycle, and a study of lion attacks in southeastern Tanzania between 1988 and 2009 found the risk to humans spiked in the days after a full moon, exactly when the evening hours went black early. The night was a predator's working shift, and every human alive was inside it, on the ground, blind. So the fire wasn't ambience, it was the wall. Anthropologist Polly Weissner, who spent decades with the Jew Hoansi in the Kalahari, put a number on the difference between day and night talk. She recorded conversations across dozens of camp gatherings and found that in daylight, around 34% of talk was complaint, criticism, and conflict over who owed what to whom. Practical, sharp-elbowed, economic. At night, by the fire, that dropped to about 6%. 81% of the night conversations were stories. That is not a small statistic. That is a species switching operating systems at sunset, which raises an obvious problem. Stories don't fill your stomach or fix your arrow. Why would people who spent all day on the edge of hunger burn their remaining alertness on things that never happened? Because the stories were doing work. In Weissner's recordings, the night tales weren't idle. They were about named individuals, distant relatives, marriages 3 camps away, the man who broke a food-sharing rule 12 years ago, and what happened to him. She argued that firelit talk was how a group kept track of a social network far larger than the 25 people it could see. It built the map of who you could show up hungry to and not be turned away, which in the Kalahari is a life insurance policy that pays out. And you already know what that feels like, because you do it too. You do it at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep, and you find yourself relitigating a conversation from 2019. Your brain, given darkness and no task, reaches for the social ledger. That was once the most valuable thing you could be doing with idle hours. The problem is that the same darkness that made you social also made you defenseless, and someone had to stay awake. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. If lions hunt at night and humans sleep on the ground, somebody's eyes have to be open. In 2017, David Sampson and a team including Charles Nunn published a study of the Hadza in northern Tanzania, using wrist actigraphy on 33 adults over 20 days. They collected about 200 hours of sleep data and looked for moments when every single person in the camp was asleep at the same time. Out of those 200 hours, they found the whole group simultaneously asleep for a total of 18 minutes. Roughly 1/3 of the time, someone was up. Nobody was assigned a watch. There was no rota nailed to a tree. What produced the coverage was something duller and cleverer: age. Older adults woke earlier and slept lighter. Younger adults stayed up late. The team called it the poorly sleeping grandparent hypothesis, that the sleep problems we treat as the decay of an aging brain are the residue of a scheduling system, an unpaid night shift filled by the people whose bodies had stopped letting them sleep deeply anyway. Which means the 70-year-old who wakes at 4 and gives up wasn't malfunctioning. He was early for a job nobody told him had been abolished. There's a second thing keeping people awake in there, and it has nothing to do with predators. It's the fire itself, and the fire has a chemistry problem. An open hearth inside a shelter produces carbon monoxide and fine particulate smoke at levels that would get a modern building condemned. Kirk Smith, an environmental health researcher at Berkeley who spent his career on household smoke, described cooking over an open indoor fire as equivalent to burning hundreds of cigarettes an hour in the room. The World Health Organization still attributes millions of deaths a year to household air pollution from solid fuels. And that's with chimneys, with ventilation, with a modern understanding of what smoke does to a lung. So the wall that kept the leopards out was slowly filling your chest with soot. Skeletal and dental evidence from prehistoric populations shows sinus and respiratory damage consistent with heavy smoke exposure. The thing that let humans own the night also shortened the lives of the people sitting closest to it, which in most camps meant women and small children. You cannot picture that hearth as cozy. Picture it as a fire you must feed all night, in a room you cannot leave, breathing something that is quietly costing you years, because the alternative outside has teeth. The fire had one more effect, and it's the one nobody would have predicted. It changed what the human brain does with the last hour before sleep. In 2014, Weissner published her Firelight findings and made a claim that goes beyond social bookkeeping. She noticed that night talk carried a different register entirely. Spirit stories, ancestors, healing dances, the invisible parts of the world. The flame produces flicker at a low frequency. The eyes relax. The demands of the day are gone. And what fills the space is exactly the material that daylight has no time for. Her argument, and she framed it carefully, as an argument rather than a finding, is that firelit hours were the incubator for the imaginative side of human culture. The gap in the night wasn't just a social calendar. It was the only slot in the 24-hour day when a person had nothing to do and nowhere to look. And human beings apparently cannot sit in that condition without inventing something. Now look at what you reach for at 11 at night. Not the spreadsheet, not the plan for tomorrow. You reach for a story about people who don't exist. On a screen the size of your hand, in a dark room, you have kept the ritual perfectly and thrown away the fire. And the fire is exactly what got taken away on a date we can name. Eckhart traces the collapse of the segmented night to street lighting. Paris began installing lanterns in the 1660s under Louis XIV, thousands of them, and other European capitals followed. Suddenly the night was a place you could go. Coffee houses, theaters, taverns, then factories running shifts. By the time gas lighting spread through London in the 1810s, the night had been converted from a locked room into extra daytime you could rent. The physiology didn't get the memo. It takes far longer than 2 centuries to rewrite the timing system of a species, and yours is still running the 14-hour firmware. That's the part with a modern price tag. Around a third of adults in industrialized countries report regular sleep disturbance, and a huge share of that is one specific complaint: waking in the small hours and being unable to get back down. Vers volunteers, given real darkness, did exactly the same thing and reported it as pleasant. So the wake-up itself isn't the disease. The panic attached to it is. You wake at 3, and instead of an hour of quiet with melatonin still high, you get a lit screen, a clock telling you how much sleep you've lost, and the knowledge that a shift starts at 8. The interval survived. What died was everything that used to be in it, which leaves the strangest reversal of all. The dark was the dangerous part, and we abolished it. So why does the abolition feel like a loss? Because of what shared the space. Look at what happened in that gap when it worked. 500 years of documents calling it first sleep. 18 minutes out of 200 hours when a Hadza camp was fully unconscious. 6% complaint, 81% stories. An old man awake at 4 because that was his post. A woman coughing beside a hearth that was keeping her children alive and taking her lungs. 14 hours where the only available entertainment was each other. Every single one of those things needed the darkness to exist. Not tolerated it, needed it. The stories needed a night long enough that there was nothing else to do. The map of who owed you a meal needed hours of nowhere to be. The grandparents' broken sleep needed a camp that could be eaten. Take the darkness out, and none of it has a reason to be there, and none of it has anywhere to go. We built lights instead. It was the right call. Nobody is going back to breathing soot and listening for hyenas. But the trade was never advertised honestly, because what we bought was ours, and what we spent was the only room in the day where a human being had to sit still with other human beings and make something up. You still go there. Every time you wake at 3 with your heart going and reach for the phone, you're standing in the doorway of that room, and the room is empty. No fire, no voices, no one keeping watch, because there's nothing left to watch for. Just you, lit by a rectangle, telling yourself a story about how badly you're sleeping.